However, I think this registers as one of the greatest political flip-flops we have seen perhaps ever. On Tuesday, you've got that firebrand of a speech in Georgia, and within 48 hours, he goes back to the Hill where he's come away empty-handed before, and he said, "Don't know if it can be done." How's that happen?
Well, I think this week, whether it was the horrific miscalculation of the Georgia speech or the defeat at the Supreme Court or the clear miscalculation to understand Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin's position, I think we're seeing the collapse of the Biden presidency. And, I think it's in the interest of every American, Democrat, Republican, to have a strong, sharp, thoughtful president. But that's clearly not what we have right now. The president seems too weak to tell Pelosi and Schumer to focus on the urgent needs of the moment: inflation, immigration, crime. And they seem afraid of some of the fringe elements in their own party, too afraid to keep the federal government tethered to reality. And it seems to me the deeper problem in the White House right now is that the president is governing for Twitter and not for the American people. I mean, all these things they keep saying. This is the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Insisting on voter ID is Jim Crow. I mean, they keep saying this stuff. It's all a Twitter media hallucination. And I'm genuinely wondering, and I have some Democratic colleagues who behind closed doors are wondering where this is coming from and whether the president is actually getting access to the full scope of the facts or whether he's purposely being kept in the dark. So my hope is, if they actually want to try and salvage this thing, he's got to do some dramatic changes. I think it starts with firing Ron Klain, firing Tony Fauci, some of these failed messengers that don't have the trust of the American people. But you got to govern for the American people and stop governing for this fringe element on Twitter.
Personnel changes might help, right? But I think that it all flows from the top, right? The leadership, the strategy, the decision making, all of that. Here's how Jen Psaki yesterday explained the low poll numbers.
What you see in most of these polls is a real frustration and exhaustion with COVID and the fact that it is not over. We share that. We understand that. People are fatigued across the country. The president knows that the most important step he can take is to continue to fight to get the pandemic under control and also to lower costs for Americans across the country.
I think one thing that's baffling is that they continue to run into these roadblocks. They knew they were going to lose this week. They're pushing it anyway. And in fact, they're not even just going to stop now. Senator Schumer will keep everybody in next week to do that. So when you go home and you talk to the people of Wisconsin, what is their greatest frustration or maybe worry about where the country is at the moment? Because it's not just the right wing who is saying they're concerned. You had columnists like David Ignatius and others saying it today.
Well, I do think the botched efforts on COVID are at the top of the list for many Wisconsin families. What did we see over the holidays, right? We saw vaccine testing lines that were reminiscent of gas lines in the Carter administration. We didn't have at-home tests, right? We didn't have access to treatments like monoclonal antibodies. People are asking me, where did all the money go? Where did the $2 trillion go? And now we have reports on top of that some of this money for testing was actually diverted to illegal immigrants who violated our laws. So the whole thing doesn't add up. The other concerns I hear every single day are just going back to this school closure nonsense. There's no scientific, no medical reason to be closing down schools. And the fact that we're going to have more learning loss after we did a profound disservice to our kids, many of whom were in the worst socioeconomic circumstances. This was our biggest failure in the pandemic over the last year, shutting down our schools. We're allowing the fear of adults to infect the classroom and really rob our kids of part of their future. That's the other thing I hear from Wisconsin families. And so the teachers' unions, I think, have just been despicable. We're seeing this play out in Chicago, and we just can't continue to shut down schools at this point.
Back to the